Hey everybody, what's good? What's going on? JB here with another CyberInsight live stream. It is our Wednesday talk that we continue to have, and this week we're going to be talking about looking at job applications or job recs for system engineer positions. So the past few weeks we've gone through and talked about network engineers and help desk. I think we hit what else? Cyber analysts. And so I think this is a fourth one that we're doing. So we're gonna, dive into that. As you have questions, you want to drop those in the stream, then cool, we can go ahead and talk about that. Kind of gonna approach this from a few different perspectives because system engineer is kind of very overarching. And so we're gonna look at some recs for some Windows engineers, some virtualization engineers, and a Linux engineer. So if you all have your VCPs and other certs that are apparently in very high demand right now, then I'd love to hear about those. And if you don't, then we can talk about whether or not getting a VMware cert is going to be super lucrative and get you the job that you want. Or maybe there's some other skills that will better prepare you to make an impact in whatever environment you're going to be going into. So let's hop over into my desktop here and bring this up. Hope everybody's having a good week. And so I found a few. If you've been watching the previous videos, we kind of just went to Indeed and did a search on different types of jobs kind of locally to my area. So they're going to be, leaning more towards stuff that's in the DC area. We might see stuff that's a little bit more aligned with government work, just because there's so much of that here in this area. But yeah, let's kind of dive into this and see what they're talking about. Since we kind of mentioned this before, and it's always something that is requested, kind of in the job descriptions, we won't necessarily have to go into it too much, or not hit on it as much as we have in the past with every single one that we go through. But obviously at this point it should be pretty understandable that they're looking for somebody who has soft skills along with the particular technical skills they're looking for. So the ability to communicate properly, do research, documentation, critical thinking, analytical skills, all of these things are actually what's going to take you further in your career and make you have a larger impact for your team and your client and whatever the mission is for the organization, compared to strictly leaning just on pure technical skills. Because you could be stacked with the technical skills, but you could be a punk and nobody wants to work with you. You can't talk to people. You can't communicate. You can't, influence people in a positive way. Yeah, and you're going to have kind of a hard time. So it's always good to keep that in mind, that you want to be working on those additional soft skills as well. And if there's areas that are lacking, then, that's actually a great opportunity to try to get involved in things that make you utilize those, like public speaking. For one, you might not feel comfortable doing that, but the more and more you do it, especially if you're given some positive, or positive might not be the right word, but as long as you're given constructive feedback to help you continue to get better at stuff, then that's definitely the way to go. So as I mentioned, this is a Windows system engineer slot, and what they're looking for as far as technical skills, talk about a whole bunch of different types of data center technologies. So whenever you're talking about being a systems engineer, and you might think that it's specific to just the operating system in general, right? So in this point, we're talking about Windows, so you're assuming it's going to be, Windows servers. There's really a whole bunch of other components that go along with that and integrate very closely with that. And normally, people are looking for somebody that at least has some of those skills on the periphery, right? So that's going to be stuff like virtualization. That's going to be storage types of things. Understanding how to install rack physical equipment. Even if primarily you're working with virtual servers, you still are going to be installing physical, probably ESX servers to run your virtual environment on. So having some background with that, probably having some background with different flavors of hardware vendors, so maybe like Dell or HP. Those are things that you're going to be running into quite a bit, because you also need to be familiar normally with how to do firmware updates on the physical equipment, maybe how to use like the iDRAC management interfaces, different things that kind of you don't really think about until you're actually in an operational environment and have had experience working with those kind of additional technologies when you're managing server infrastructure. So yeah, they want hands-on experience with at least two of the DC technologies that we talked about. So server, storage, virtualization, networking, or software. That makes sense. Documentation again. I mean, we always hit on that. Documentation is going to be super, super important. So whether that's documentation on SOPs of how to do things, documentation from the perspective of your server baselines, how to build out new devices, anything that kind of feeds into any type of GRC type of requirements that you have from a security perspective. A lot of times there's outputs from the engineering team that feed into that type of reporting for your organization. Oh, look at that. We already have a comment talking about iDRACs. Yeah, I mean, they're always, it's always something you got to think about. Either the iDRACs, whatever you might be using for out-of-band management. So we're talking about network out-of-band management, I think on Monday. What you have for console access into different physical server environments definitely falls into those types of things as well. Storage technology, I mean, when you think about it and you walk through the process of what's actually happening, especially if you're working with virtualized servers, you can store the virtual images on disk, but a lot of times people will have fiber channel connections back to a SAN. So you need to at least be aware how some of that stuff works. Sometimes you'll actually have just specific SAN engineers that handle that and maybe the fiber channel aspect of that. But you need to understand how all of that interconnects, how you might partition space within the SANs, how you might make that link within vCenter if you're using virtual servers to actually have that connect back via whatever types of interfaces, virtual interfaces you have, back into your SAN infrastructure. So those are all important things to know about. Again, more storage stuff, sizing, performance, and high availability. So it looks like these folks are definitely not looking for just somebody who just, knows how to install Windows Server and maybe a little bit of Active Directory. They're looking for the full life cycle support of their server infrastructure. I did look through this a little bit ahead of time, and it didn't mention any Linux stuff in here, though. So, depending upon the environment, you might be a really, really heavy Windows shop, and you might not need to know Linux. Don't let that stop you from learning Linux, though, because you will eventually get places where you do need to be familiar with it. Hands-on experience with replication technologies. Again, that's going to be stuff based for your SANs, or it could be, depending upon what type of backup solutions you're using. If it's not SAN backups, but something else, you might need to be familiar with that. Data migration methods. I'm surprised we haven't hit cloud stuff in here yet. Maybe we will. Backup and recovery, right? So disaster recovery when it comes to server infrastructure. Probably going to need to know or have some knowledge and experience with different types of backups, whether, if you're in a small place, maybe you're just using, some Windows backups. If you're at a place that's much larger, you might actually be using different types of tools, like rapid recovery for physical servers. For virtual servers, Veeam is an excellent tool set to use as far as backing up virtual servers. I'd highly recommend anybody who's using virtual servers and infrastructure to look into different types of virtualization backup. tools. So we talked about SANs and backup, stuff like that. As far as virtualization, this is a VMware shop, so all you Hyper-V fans don't need to worry about that. I'm sure Hyper-V has gotten a lot better. I tried using it maybe like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and it was a bit of a crapshoot compared to using VMware and ESX. So even though it's not necessarily a networking position, if you are doing virtualization, you probably are going to end up working with your networking team a little bit, especially when it comes to the fact that these VMware environments have what are called virtual switches or virtual distributed switches. And that means that it's normally going to be an extension of your layer 2 network that's, on your physical Cisco devices or, whatever vendor you're using into your virtual environment via trunks or access ports, depending on how much you have that built out. And then within vCenter, you're going to end up building out configurations. They aren't very hard to do. But for the different VLANs that you're going to have that are going to be supported on these vSwitches, and they kind of get pushed out and assigned to your VMware clusters. And then whenever you're spinning up a virtual server and you have your virtual interfaces, you're going to assign those to the VLANs that you have already distributed across these virtual switches. Excuse me. Let's see. We already talked about fiber channel and SANs. DNS is always important to know when it comes to server stuff. And then additional technical skills, highly desired. So it's kind of interesting at this point. This has been much more like infrastructure-based stuff and not really talking about OS stuff. And then at this point, then they're talking about, so pretty much if you understand the underlying technologies, that's what they're looking for. And then, they would really, really prefer that you have Microsoft AD experience, Azure AD, a little bit of cloud stuff. Yeah. So education, bachelor's degree preferred, not required. Experience, those are all preferred. So, I think if you, as I kind of highlighted, if you can nail 2 of the primary data center technologies that they mention you have experience in that, then you'll probably be solid. Also interesting to note that they do not mention anything about certs in this. So take that for however you want to take that. The certs probably could maybe help you as far as articulating some experience, but if you don't have them, then you are good to go. Let's see. Hey, what's up, DJax? What's good? Hey, Kiki. Yeah, salary's pretty solid, I would say. Especially for this area. They don't mention anything about any type of security clearance or anything like that, but in this area with the amount of data centers and technology companies, if you really do have, the background in these types of technologies, because realistically in this area, they will easily be able to find somebody that has experience in 2 or more of these things, and probably find somebody that has experience in all of these things, just because if you've been in the industry for a minute, especially in this area, these are kind of just things that end up falling under the responsibilities of a systems engineer. I will say this isn't saying that this is an entry-level position by any means. I also wouldn't say that this is a senior-level systems engineer, because they aren't really talking about, I didn't see anything about like architecture level type of stuff. It's just, you're going to be on a team and you need to be familiar with these types of things. Let's see. How many years do you think it would take for someone to get this type of experience? Well, you could see kind of from what they're talking about 3 years of experience in these different types of technologies. Honestly, it's really going to depend upon like the work environment that you're in. So again, this is not an entry-level position. This isn't something that I'm saying, you should expect to go get your Net Plus and your A Plus, and you're going to get this type of role, because honestly, it would be completely overwhelming, and you actually do need to build up, the skill sets that go along with that. But, once you get to that point and you're in that environment, all of these technologies all work together. So I don't think that it would take too long to get familiar with these. Um, as long as it's an environment that has a pretty robust pace as far as their operations. Let's see if there's anything else I kind of wanted to hit on that. Again, I mean, I say this with, pretty much all of these. The job that you're doing today isn't the job that you're going to end up doing eventually. And if you have the goal of moving in and doing these types of things, whatever it is, like if this is your goal that you want to be doing systems engineering work, then you need to find whatever opportunities are there within the current role that you have to get involved in this type of stuff. So for instance, we're talking about understanding physical implementation of servers. There is not one server team or systems engineering team that is going to turn down help from somebody else to rack and mount servers and make sure that the power stuff is run, properly to, dual power supplies that are on separate power circuits, understanding, how the fiber channel stuff connects back to the SANs, all that type of stuff. I would say for the most part, as long as you put some initiative into, trying to help out with these things, people will bring you along for the ride for sure, because everybody needs help. Let's see. Let me move on to this next one here. So this one is much more focused on Active Directory and identity management. So let's see what they're talking about here. So AD, Active Directory, identity management, and PKI services. So public key infrastructure services. So dealing with like certs and how you would use those certs within an organization for different types of authentication and authorization access, all that type of stuff. A bit more, this is a bit more scoped than the other one because you're dealing with that. A little bit of Azure, a little bit of Office 365, Exchange, much more aligned with Windows stuff. Review, participate, develop, update architectural standards, reference architecture design standards. That's documentation. Participate in design, evaluation, or review. Again, you're participating, you aren't leading, so you would be, an engineer that is on a team helping do these things, but again, I would not say this is a senior engineer slot. Although it could grow into that. I mean, that's normally what happens is people get hired and then you're there for a bit and your experience within the environment will lead to you being promoted up to a more senior level. Working closely with application infrastructure teams and vendors, blah, 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 blah. So infrastructure teams is kind of looks like it's a little bit more aligned with what that previous job rec was looking at. And Wesley has a comment back there. I asked because I've been in IT for 5 months and I feel competent in half of these requirements. Well, for sure. So that's the thing, right? As long as you have the experience in that, and you can articulate that, I would not let that stop you from applying for that role, right? Definitely do that. And if you can talk your way through, and I don't mean talk your way through in like a negative way, but if you can articulate all of the different points that they are interested in understanding and you can explain your experience and how you're proficient in those skills, then yeah, I mean, you could probably take a role like that if you actually do have the skills in that and you're comfortable doing that. So at that point, then it would depend upon how you write your resume to, end up cover all those kind of points that they discussed. Also, if you have any certs that might help align with that, then that might be able to, counterbalance the preferred years requirements. But remember, when we were looking at that, it was talking about preferred. It wasn't a hard requirement. So I've never never really interviewed somebody and let the actual numbers of years of experience deter away from the fact of if somebody actually is able to demonstrate the skills. If they're actually able to demonstrate the skills and they're going to have the positive impact that the team is looking for in hiring that position, then obviously you're going to do that. So, yeah. Let's see. What else were we talking about? Strategic solutions. You said have to walk the talk as well, most definitely. And that's what it comes down to is being able to demonstrate, what it is that they're trying to fill from a skill gap perspective. Collaboratively, map requirements. I mean, this is all just kind of the normal engineer stuff that you would expect to see. I mean, and so that's kind of the difference from moving from an admin role into an engineer role, is you start to really focus holistically on kind of the full life cycle of whatever it is the technology that you're working on. Where if you're an admin, let's say you're a Windows admin, then you might just be working on, Active Directory and implementing some GPOs, and that might kind of just be it. But when you kind of fit into that engineer role, then it's everything from, building it out, operating it, upgrading it, sunsetting it once it's, time to get rid of it and move on to something else. So that's kind of, the very general career progression that you end up going from when you move from an admin role into an engineer role. Kind of just more of the same. So they want 5 years of technology experience, right? So not 5 years of engineer experience, 5 years of technology experience. So you could probably slice and dice that however you want. And again, I would say, depending upon what other qualifications you have, what other education you might have, you can probably supplement that very easily and, articulate certain things in your resume. 5 years experience supporting Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, and file services. So 5 years of experience supporting this, right? Again, this goes back to why if you take a service desk or help desk position, you need to be kind of looking at the long haul and what it is that you're trying to get out of that. And so that experience on help desk definitely feeds into this, for sure. So being able to articulate that, tie that back with maybe some other certs that you have, again, you could probably knock down that 5 years experience as long as you actually have the skills to go along with it. Experience with AWS Azure. Yeah, we kind of talked about cloud stuff. Cool. Let's move on and look at this system engineer one. So this one is a virtualization engineer. And so this one is a little bit different than the other ones that we looked at. Because this one is actually a government job. This one requires a clearance. So I assume that this is going to mention, let's see if it's in here anywhere. Yeah, 8570. We can talk about that once we get down there, what 8570 is. So, like I said, VMware, ESX and vSphere, and again, SAN. So I think that when you are talking about getting into virtualization, you're going to need to understand that that SAN component of that is super, super heavy when those things are tied together. The interesting thing is I don't necessarily see, in a regular organization, you're not going to necessarily see it called out so specifically as a virtualization engineer. But depending on if you're a service provider, well, especially if you're a service provider, then that might be something that's more aligned with that, right? So if you think of somebody working at Amazon, a lot of what they're going to be doing is virtualization, and they might not be as much leaning into actually building out and managing individual virtual servers, right? So it all depends. This is talking a little bit about Windows stuff, Server 2012, 2016. And Active Directory, DNS, DHCP. I mean, your normal Windows stuff. Nothing really jumps out too much there. Bachelor's degree. So they want, or an additional 5 years of experience in lieu of degree. So they're counting a degree as 5 years. 7 years of relevant experience in VMware, SAN technology, stuff like that. So I would definitely say at this point they're looking for a more mid to senior level engineer. They also are looking for security tools, ACAS, which is, for those who don't know, ACAS is what they call Tenable's Nessus, but from a DoD perspective. So when I see ACAS or HBSS, I know right away that's actually going to be a DoD contract. HBSS is a McAfee endpoint security solution. Let's see. And so we talked about the 8570, level 2 compliant, or the AIT level 2 compliant with the 8570. So if you aren't familiar with that, these DoD contracts require folks to have some level of security certification independent of what it is that they're doing if they have some type of IT role. So that's why you'll hear a lot of folks talk about how Security Plus is a certification that will open up a lot of doors for you. That is mainly because a lot of organizations or contracts require this 8570 compliance. So if you don't have it, I think in some places you might get like a 6-month waiver, but if you can't get a cert that matches that, then you're going to get kicked off the contract. So it's kind of an interesting thing to be aware of. Here, let me bring this up over here. And let me see if I can. I think you probably can see that, but let me zoom in just a little bit more. Okay, so you have kind of these different levels. I think this is a technician, information. Is it information assurance? Oh, sorry. Information assurance technician level? I forget what the acronym stands for. Let me see if they mention it in here anywhere. No. Okay. Doesn't really matter too much. But depending upon whether you're actually doing just technical work as like an engineer or an admin, if you're doing management work, if you're doing cybersecurity work, these all kind of fall into different buckets. And then there's different certs that kind of meet the requirement for whatever level you're falling into. So what you'll actually see here is the Security Plus is good because it covers IET level 1 and level 2, and it also covers the IAM level 1, and I don't know if it covers anything else there. So as far as like entry level roles kind of go, that's why a lot of people end up going with it, because it's a bit easier to get than you going out and trying to get, you know, a CCNA security, right? Especially if you don't necessarily have that background. I'll actually put a link for this in the video description if you want to kind of poke around and see different things. And you actually see like for, you know, senior level stuff, so level 3 type of stuff, that's where the CISP comes into play quite a bit. So both on the technical level, on the management level. On the architect, I think that's architect level, then it gets kind of interesting and you get into these specializations. I actually have this one here, the CISP ISAP, and that is a higher level CISP specialization that is in architecture. And they also have one that is in engineering as well. And then you get kind of down more into like the cyber analyst roles down here. You'll see that a lot of these down in here. It's blurry a little bit. Oh, let me see. Let's see. If I go out, does that make it look better, or does that? How's that look now? And like I said, I'll put the link for this in the description so you can kind of poke around with that. These bottom ones down here are much more dealing with like incident response or blue team type of stuff. And you'll more so see like the SAN certs and stuff like that down in there. Okay, let's go back to... Let's go back to this one here. So we were talking about the bachelor's degree. This was much more of kind of a mid to senior level engineer slot because of the fact of how many years that they actually wanted. Level 2 compliant, obviously, means that it's not an entry-level position. Um, they want a VMware certification. Hey, here's your VCP right here. If you got your VCP, you're good to go. It's actually interesting because I've not ran into any jobs that actually required a VCP. So side note with VMware certs, if you have VMware in your environment and you're purchasing stuff, oftentimes they will give you, I think they're called like learning credits, which allow you to then go take their classes and get a cert. So what I've seen happen a lot is folks don't have the certs coming in. You buy a lot of VMware stuff, they give you the learning certs, and because the training and stuff is free, then that's how people kind of go about getting those VMware certifications. But I've never really seen that be a hard or fast thing. Most folks that I've seen that have system engineering backgrounds, server engineering backgrounds, just have that knowledge from working with VMware because it's so prevalent at this point. It just kind of is what it is. I could see that maybe being a little bit different if you were actually looking for somebody who is like maybe a VMware architect. And depending on the organization, that might, be necessary. But in some places, depending on the size of it, that isn't so much. You get some ESX servers, you get vCenter, throw that thing up, get your cluster set up, and you're off and running. Let's see. Active Directory, DoD, secret clearance, kind of already talked about that. All right. Then that will move us on to this last one. And this is a Linux engineer. It's kind of interesting. I actually had a hard time finding a specific Linux engineer job rec compared to just a regular systems engineering stuff. And look at this. Again, DoD 8570 IET level 2. So in this scenario, you could have your CCNA. You could have your Red Hat certified system administrator. You could have your VCP. And that would be great, and you will make good money. You will not get this job because none of those meet the DoD 8570 requirements. So it's always good to kind of keep in mind what are kind of the requirements for the jobs that you're going after. It does differ. There are situations where having all those certs is going to get you a very solid job, pay really well. There's other situations, such as this, where you can have all of those, and because you don't have this other one, you're not going to get that position. If they like you, then maybe they'll bring you on, and you'll get kind of that chance to get it within 6 months. But remember, these things are pretty competitive, and so if somebody else comes in and maybe has one or two of those certs and the Security Plus, then they're going to get it. Or if the person comes in with a Security Plus and, maybe he's able to knock the interview out of the water, you just never know. So it's always good to have some situational awareness about, what jobs are in your area, what are the requirements for the particular ones that you're going after. Let's see. So just install configuration maintenance of Linux servers. Yeah. Plans, implements, maintains. Again, getting kind of into the language of engineering versus admin. Performs administrative and management tasks. Operations, installs. We'll see if they actually mention anything about any tools that they use in here. So, if it's a Red Hat environment, they probably use a tool like Satellite. As far as centralized management of their Red Hat servers, they might use Ansible as well as far as pushing out different types of configurations to devices. Project planning, acts as technical lead on special projects. So, again, not a junior engineer level, probably more a mid to senior. And again, that was kind of hit on by the fact that they want a IAT level 2 8570 cert. Third tier support for the help desk. Yep. Conducts routine server and client vulnerability assessment scans. That's interesting. So normally you would have a security team that would probably do that. So this might be a smaller contract, possibly. Um, and then executes remediation strategies based on scan result. Yeah, that I wouldn't say that that would raise a flag to me, but that would definitely that would be something I would probe a lot more on in questioning during the interview if I was a candidate to kind of understand, how that all goes together. Because that can get kind of messy if everybody's just doing scans of their own stuff versus having some type of plan and team that kind of implements all of those things. Disaster recovery planning, maintains compliance with SOPs. Okay, qualifications. Bachelor's in computer science or other computer degree, 8570 IT2, and some type of certification is desired. Not required, but desired, and this one is required. Okay. Background needed 4 to 6 years, and preferred experience with federal or DoD. Additional skills and qualifications. Practical implementation of Red Hat technical and security best practices and implementation of DoD STIGs. Okay, so that would then lead me to believe that not only are they doing vulnerability scans, they're doing compliance scans probably as well. Oracle Linux management tools. Okay, so we're kind of getting into some of the management stuff I was wondering about. Enterprise patch and configuration management. Maybe that's going back to satellite stuff. All good questions to ask when you go into the interview. And then as the interviewee, if you aren't familiar with these types of things, you would want to do some background on that. Well, I mean, since this requires a a secret clearance, I think, then you would probably already have, not you probably would, you would definitely already have an understanding of what STIGs are and stuff like that. Understanding of databases, Oracle, OpenStack, all that fun stuff. Need to be able to lift a little bit of weight. Probably be dealing with some servers. So, cool. All right, so I think that is it. So that was what, 4? Windows 1, which was kind of an infrastructure overall type of position, dealing with VMware, physical servers, SANs, all that jazz. Then one that was much more focused on Active Directory, PKI, identity management. Then, what was the other one? Systems engineer, which was a virtualization engineer, and then a Linux engineer. So I think that kind of covers a good amount of stuff as far as different types of server engineers or systems engineers, stuff like that. Does anybody have any questions? I know that some folks were going to prepare some questions maybe, or maybe I already answered what they had. But yeah, talk amongst yourselves and come up with some questions. I don't have a bourbon or whiskey tonight, but I do have a protein shake. So yeah, so Baby Yoda back there, he actually talks and moves, but I'd have to. I don't know if I took the batteries out, but yeah, he moves all over the place and makes Baby Yoda noises. He's pretty cute. So any other questions? Because if not, we can go ahead and wrap it up. I'm trying to think what else is going on this week. All right, so we tomorrow we're going to go back to the daily series of quick little videos on how to build secure networks. I'm going to do another CompTIA Pentest Plus Try Hack Me room. Either going to do the I think I might do the Metasploit one next. But I have to figure out whether I want to do that Friday night or Saturday. But I'll let you know. Oh, you still have yours in the box? So I took him out. I do still have a different one in the box though. Hold on 1 second. I got this one in the box. Let's see if I can do that without getting a shine on it. Really hard to not get some glare. But yeah, I got that one, which is pretty sweet. And let's see. Yeah, then I got all those other Star Wars Christmas tree ornaments. All right. Let's see. Got a few stuff coming in. Always hearing there's a huge demand for tech professionals, but every job I apply to says there's 100 plus applicants, and I hear people complain often that the requirements are unrealistic. Yeah. So that probably also depends upon the location that you're at, and then the specific roles that you're applying for. I mean, not that that's on you, but just in general, right? As far as like what type of roles are folks, looking to bring in and hire for compared to the pool of folks that are applying for certain things. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish I had like a really amazing answer, but I think the best thing to do, at least from my perspective, because I've seen this work, the best for myself and other folks and stuff like that, is you handle what you can control from your technical perspective as far as getting education, experience, and certs. And then building your network is probably going to be the thing that's going to lead you to the most amount of opportunities. The job recs that are out there and applying for them and stuff like that, that's definitely a way to go. And depending upon what you have that sets you apart from other folks, can be beneficial to you. But to your point, if you have 10 people that are all applying for the same role, or 20 people that are all applying for the same role, then that makes it a little bit different. So I think that's where making connections with people, especially folks that are in the industry and have been in the industry for a bit longer, putting yourself out there, letting people know that you're looking for certain types of things, certain types of roles, things like that, is probably going to at least get you better leads than not really sticking out from, a group of 20 applicants. And I know that kind of sucks, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that making human connections with people, and people, having an understanding of, the skills that somebody has, and what they're looking for, and, stuff like that, you have a better chance of somebody being like, oh, hey, you know what? Yeah, I remember he was looking for this type of stuff. My friend mentioned the other day that his company's about ready to start looking for, another role for this, and it can kind of give you a little bit of a boost when it comes to that type of stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the job, but it might be what's able to get you in the door, and then, people's recommendations go a super, super long way. So that's why I always, try to help people out as much as I can when it comes to that type of stuff, because I understand the importance of the networking and human aspect to all of this, especially when you're up against a HR computerized system that, the stuff that they're looking for might not even be the right stuff. So let's see. Oh, Djax is going on Twitch in 5 minutes. So, yeah, if you're here, go hop on over there once he spins all that stuff up. I don't know what he's doing over there today, but maybe another Try Hack Me room. I think he was doing some Linux stuff last night. So, definitely do that. People, networking is a great... Yeah, networking is is what works. Seriously, don't underestimate it, and don't be a dick too. So, as long as you don't underestimate it and you're not an ass to people, I I think that can take you pretty far and help you out quite a bit. My employer uses mostly open source, Linux-based software for hypervisor, VoIP, and NAS. I'm unsure if I should focus on that architecture or focus on what's becoming possible. So the underlying, well, underlying isn't the overarching philosophies that come to those different types of technology is going to be the same. Whether you're talking about using open source Linux, so like let's say you're using CentOS, right? It's going to be extremely similar to you moving into a Red Hat environment. Like there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on some very, very specific things. Again, the management software that you might be using is going to be different. There might be some specific features that are new depending upon the version of Red Hat that you're using compared to the version of CentOS that you were using, right? So I would focus on learning as much as you can about the capabilities and how all these things work together. And when it comes time to move into those other things, you'll have a good foundational baseline of that knowledge and be able to pick up the little tiny intricacies that go along with specific vendors. Now, the flip side to that is if you were like, man, I really just want to hit Red Hat stuff really, really hard. You going and doing that, like let's say you just started studying for your Red Hat Certified System Administrator, right? You aren't going to be learning stuff in there that's not going to help you working with the open source stuff. So I don't want to say that to dissuade you from going that route. I think either way that you do that, you're learning information that's going to help you in your environment. So that is a good question. Let's see. Any other questions? And I'm doing kind of like bouncing off of that because we were kind of talking about the potential of Red Hat versus, other open source type of stuff. I started doing Linux Plus practical lab videos. The first one I did was this past weekend. The Linux Plus is, pretty solid as well. It covers almost, a lot of the same objectives that the Red Hat stuff covers. Only difference is, you're dealing specifically with, some of the minuscule Red Hat variations and stuff like that. So cool, man. Hey, I appreciate you coming up with the questions. I know you said that you're gonna work on some for me, so I definitely appreciate that. All right. Well, if nobody else has any other questions that they want to hit on this, if this was useful to you, you enjoyed this, please hit the like button. That's always good. Even more so, I appreciate it if you share the video, share the link with other folks who maybe the information will be valuable to them, and help them maybe answer some questions or whatever. And of course, subscribe because that's awesome too. So as far as this series of job rec stuff, I think we'll do one on cloud, and then that probably will wrap it up, unless people have something much more specific that they want to hit on. So yeah, hope everybody has a good night. Bye, Kiki. See you later. Yeah, everybody take care, and yeah, hop on the stream tomorrow. All right, bye.